I am going to vomit right now on this train, but like in a good way. How am I actually annotating? How am I doing it? This confirms my theory so much that I can say about this book. Hello, my name is Leonie. Thank you for hanging out with me. If you're new here, welcome. As someone who has been a fan of the genre for a very long time, I am finally, after so many of you have requested me to do this, reading the original Dark Academia book that sprung the whole aesthetic, The Secret History by Donna Tartt. The Secret History was actually published 30 years ago in 1992, so it's a little bit old. So I'm also going to be reading a more modern Dark Academia book that recently came out, and that is Babel by RF Kuang, which has been described as a tonal response to The Secret History, so I thought it would be fun to read them both in one vlog. Don't worry, the vlog is going to be completely spoiler free, but I will of course talk about like the themes and my ideas surrounding these books with you guys. I'm going to start with The Secret History. I'm a little nervous about reading this book because it's so old. I'm afraid it's going to be a little bit too, you know, the pretentious elitist side of Dark Academia. And then for Babel, I fully expect that to be a new favorite, to be honest. Also, in honor of the Dark Academia aesthetic, this is going to be the first time I'm going to be fully annotating my books, writing in them, taking my pen, I don't care, because I kind of have always wanted to do that. So let's give it a try. This book, there's a lot. I'm like not even that far in, and there's already so much that I can say about this book. Me and my pen are having a field trip annotating the whole thing. Okay, where do we even start? Reading this book has made me realize, or I guess remember, what Dark Academia is all about, because of course this is kind of the book that sparked the Dark Academia aesthetic. We follow Richard as he is admitted into this very special college, and there he is admitted into this very elite small classics class where he learns Latin and Greek. There's only 4 other students, and there's this charismatic professor named Julian who doesn't want to get any other students in his class, but somehow Richard manages to be allowed into his class, and he is very intrigued by these other students in the class because they're just so enigmatic, they're so interesting, they're so smart, they're so Dark Academia. Richard is the only one in this group that seems to come from a not rich background, and the other characters don't even seem to realize that. Like, they don't even seem to think about like the option that someone in their class might not be well off. And it's even the first time that Julian, the professor, admitted someone who was on a scholarship. But if you told me that this book came out 2 years ago as a critique of the Dark Academia aesthetic, I would believe you, because of how the Dark Academia aesthetic has evolved over time. You would almost forget that in its origins, it's really one giant critique of elitism and classism and academia. Like, the dark in Dark Academia is because it's about the dark sides of academia. And it's kind of made me realize that there's a difference between Dark Academia and the dark academia aesthetic. You know, the aesthetic is just a surface level thing, just the pictures that we find on Pinterest, the image that we're all trying to emulate when we're trying to be dark academia. And then there's real dark academia, which I guess in essence critiques the dark academia aesthetic that sprung from it. And it's actually very ironic that the dark academia aesthetic came to be a thing, because I feel like this book is one giant warning to not do that. We're all Richards. Richard adores, is like so interested by these other students. He wants to be like them. At some point he like goes out to buy clothes to fit in, you know, and tweed blazers in vintage stores so he can fit in more with these people, which is exactly what the dark academia aesthetic does. And there's this line that really stuck with me because I felt like it perfectly encapsulated what dark academia is and is an aesthetic. He's talking about these other people in his class. I envied them and found them attractive. They had the indication of being intensely cultivated. Studied or not, I wanted to be like them. It was heady to think that these qualities were acquired ones and that perhaps this was the way I might learn them. Right? This idea that if you just are around these people and take on the surface qualities that they have, you could learn to be like them. Which is in essence what we're all trying to do when we try to emulate the dark academia aesthetic, is take on this idea of these certain clothes, these certain activities to do, and that will somehow make us like these very elitist, smart, classic students. Whereas in reality, of course, that's an illusion, because the whole point is that they're just very rich. They're just rich and white, and therefore they are in this position. That is not to say that I don't like the dark academia aesthetic. I think it's great that it encourages learning and a love for studying and a love for literature and the humanities, especially in a world where science is often valued more over humanities. However, I do think it's good to think about, or at least be aware of, where the roots of this dark academia image comes from, because in its essence, the image of dark academia is just the image of like private school white boys at Eton, you know. So I think we can all have a hand in trying to make the dark academia aesthetic a little bit more inclusive for everyone, because obviously having a love for learning and getting away from technology and reading poetry and literature is something anyone should be able to do, because otherwise it's just perpetuating this idea that academic rigor is something that is only for certain people when it shouldn't be. So yeah, I'm loving this, and I can't wait to read more. Can't wait for the murder to happen. Hello, just popping in here to say that I thought that it would be fun to kind of keep track of what is going on in these two books, the themes, non-spoiler of course, on this little whiteboard as we go through the video. So we can kind of see them next to each other and do a little comparison. So I'm just on the secret history right now, which so far has chosen as its typical dark academia subject the classics. Classics as in Latin and Greek literature. And its main critique point is elitism and classism. That's what we got so far. We'll continue this. I'm about 200 pages into, I still don't have a bookmark. Let's have a little chat about how I'm doing so far with annotating this book, because I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering, how am I actually annotating? How am I doing it? This is the first time that I'm actually writing in the margins of the paper. I think it's a great way to connect more with the things that you're reading. I think it's kind of dark academia to annotate your books, and to me that is an example of some of the nice things about dark academia. It romanticizes what is typically seen as defiling your books and ruining your book, but I really like the stimulation of just writing your books, and it doesn't matter if it looks ugly or if it's raggedy. Like the way I'm annotating, wait, let me find an example of what I annotated on the train, and it just Look at this. Like, the lines are completely raggedy. I've written all over the margins. It didn't fit at all. The handwriting is not neat at all, but it doesn't matter. The best thing about annotation is having it as something that is completely for yourself. So when I first started annotating, I noticed that I was having these thoughts of what would someone think if they read these annotations. If I lent this book out to someone and they read my annotations, what would they think here? If I took a picture of it to share on Instagram, what would people think if they read my little annotations? And then I quickly realized that I shouldn't be doing that, because then you're not being fully truthful to what you're thinking when you're reading the book, because you're being led by this idea of like, what will other people think when they read what I've annotated. So yeah, if you're annotating, I highly recommend finding a way to remind yourself that it's just for you. In case you guys are wondering, what am I writing? Like, what do you write down in the margins? It's really just like little thoughts. So I've underlined multiple parts where Julian, the teacher of these elite students, is saying things or behaving in a certain way that remind me personally of a cult leader. So I started underlining those things, and then I've written next to it, this man behaves himself like a cult leader, so I can remember why I underlined these things. It's like a little bit of extra information. Sometimes I just write a question mark if I don't understand something. When I'm reading something and I don't know what it is, what it's a reference to, I can look it up and then I learn something new, and I really like that. This is all in reference to the cult of Dionysus, so I looked it up and I wrote down a quote by Socrates that explains it. Sometimes there's Latin that I don't understand, and then I write down a translation. When I have ideas of what's going to happen next, if I think like, ooh, maybe this means this is going to happen later, I write it down as well, because that's fun to look back on. But most of the things that I write down are ideas that I have on the themes of the book, or if I think that something is a reference to something, or my thoughts on the characters and what metaphors mean, things like that. So yeah, I highly recommend annotating, and definitely keeping it as something to yourself. Just like a little written down version of your own thoughts, and don't make it a performance. You don't have to annotate as a performance for other people. It's just for yourself. Anyway, I am now going to watch a movie. I think I'm going to be watching Kill Your Darlings, which is a classic Dark Academia movie that I haven't watched yet. So I thought, you know what? It's a cozy evening. I lit a candle. Let's watch that movie.
These are among the university's prized possessions. That's all I got.
Welcome. It's been a while since we've had actual purple time. It's actually maybe already getting a little bit too dark. For the new people here, purple time is what I call it when it's getting dark outside. So the light is getting a little bit purple, and I turn on my purple light because it's too dark for me to film, and it's that perfect moment to just chill and chat about books together. I have a little more that I want to say about The Secret History. I've been thinking about the choices that are being made in The Secret History. One of those things is the interest in classics. Not classics as in books, but classics as in the classic languages, so Latin and Greek, because there's a group of 5 students who go to the classics classes. It is interesting specifically regarding the elitist theme of this book, because the characters in this book often speak Greek with each other, and there was just this one moment where we are being told that Henry, one of the characters, is speaking Greek with their teacher, that it kind of struck me that learning to speak Greek is such a weird thing, because normally if you learn to speak a language like French or German, you are broadening your potential of people that you can communicate with. You are learning a language so you can communicate and get to know even more people, right? But when you learn to speak Greek, you don't. You do not at all. You're actually limiting yourself to being able to speak in a kind of secret language with a small group of initiated people. It's almost the opposite of why you would want to learn a language in most cases, right? Instead of learning it so you can go on holiday and make your life easier and communicate with more people, you're learning this language and it allows you to be more secretive. Like these characters, when they're talking about the murder that they commit, they're often speaking in Greek with each other because no one else can understand it. And that just made me realize how good of a choice it was thematically for Donna Tartt to choose classics as the subject that these characters are taking, because she could have chosen anything. They could have been English students, they could have been philosophy students, history students, anything, but she chose classics, and I think thematically it works so well because of the elitist nature of learning classic languages, learning to speak classic languages. Now, of course, no offense to anyone who loves to study classics, of course you can study the classics because they're super interesting, but in this case it just neatly fits the theme. And I also have a question to people who study classics at university, because when I did classics in secondary school, obviously this was, you know, early secondary school levels, so not nearly at the level that you would learn at university, but we were explicitly told that we would never have to learn to translate into Greek or Latin. We would only have to translate from Greek or Latin and be able to read those languages, but we didn't have to learn to speak them because it was useless, because no one spoke it. But here the characters learn how to speak ancient Greek and they have to learn how to write it. And I was just wondering, do you learn that at university if you actually study classics, and why? So those are more of my musings on this book. It's getting very dark. It's a little bit too late to be true purple time. Back to the board. Hello. So if we were to integrate this into our board, we would see that, interestingly, the choice of using classics as the subject is a very good one, because it just fits thematically so well with the theme of critiquing classism, since the classics are usually the language of the elites. Something I would also like to add is that we really have a cast of characters that is very morally gray, up to straight up morally wrong. Some of the characters are just straight up morally wrong. And I would also say that the critiques of classism are done through these morally gray characters, right? You're not supposed to like them, you're also not supposed to hate them. The nuances of their characters lie in this theme. Okay, I freshened up a little bit. I got wet in the rain. I'm not complaining at all. I'm not complaining that it's raining, because I'm so happy I don't even care that I got wet. I'm about halfway into this godforsaken book that is taking over my life. In a good way. I'm a little over halfway now, which means we have passed the point of no return. The book is split up kind of in two parts. At the beginning, you were told that they're gonna kill one of the characters, and then somewhere halfway it happens, and then the rest of the book is about the characters dealing with that and just the psychological consequences that these characters go through because, you know, they murdered a person. It is at this point that I'm starting to have a little bit more difficulty getting through it, and that's not because the book is getting worse. It's because after about 400 pages, I'm starting to realize that these characters are very flat and not fleshed out at all. Only our main character, because we're in his head all the time. And one of the other characters, Henry, I would say are interesting and really given a little more attention. But you know, we're following this group of 5, I think in total, 6 students, and we get to know nothing about them. I don't know anything about most of these characters. They're not fleshed out at all. But the thing is, I'm really not certain if this is a flaw in the book or if it was done intentionally. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this was Donna Tartt's goal, because the whole thing is that we are in Richard's mind, and Richard, this young, kind of ambitious but outsider boy, meets these wonderful, beautiful, amazing group of highly intelligent students, and he wants to be part of them, but he never actually gets to know them. Like, maybe that's the point of the story. I guess a better example would be our charismatic teacher, Julian, who we know nothing about. But there, I feel like very clearly it is the point. So to tell you a little about this Julian character, from the beginning of the book, I had a bad feeling about him. He kind of gave me cult leader vibes. You know, isolating these students from the rest of the school and only taking on a very highly select group of students. Maybe, I don't know, feels like a cult to me. But these characters worship him like a teacher, like a father, really. And I was listening to some interviews with Donna Tartt, and there she also mentioned that this is indeed the case, that these characters worship him like a father. And therefore I think it's very fitting that we as the reader also do not get to know this Julian character at all. I have about 200 pages left of the story. I heard that it's going to absolutely escalate towards the end, so I'm excited to see what's going to happen. I thought this would be a great opportunity to show you guys how I create the perfect cozy atmosphere in my room to read. Just a little guide on how to create the perfect chill reading evening. This is my favorite ambiance, ASMR ambiance channel. It's just full of amazing fantasy, dark ASMR ambiances. It's escalating. It's escalating. What is happening? What is happening right now? What? So I finished it, and I'm currently annotating, because I always put my tabs in after I finish the book, because I'm kind of too lazy to do it as I'm reading. I think you're probably all expecting this to look very aesthetically pleasing, beautiful, annotated version of The Secret History. I quickly found out that I'm kind of through my normal tabs. And I don't have any other pretty tabs. The only tabs I still had lying around were these alpaca ones, which are a little hard to use because they're not transparent, so they constantly obscure the words. But it's the only thing I had on hand. So that means my copy of The Secret History is currently, I'm almost done tabbing, looks like this. Yeah. Definitely not in line with the vibe of this book. Oh my god. All these little alpaca heads. So yeah, I do want to re-tab it when I get my hands on actually pretty tabs, because I've seen so many people use these like really beautiful muted dark toned tabs, and I want to get those as well. I just don't know where people get tabs like that. As a guide, I have been annotating anything that has to do with themes of dark academia and elitism, parts that I thought were funny or beautiful or just spoke to me, things that I thought were foreshadowing, want to look over later, and then I wrote down other analysis, but it's turning out to mostly just be character analysis. I didn't really tab a lot of parts that I thought were really beautiful or really spoke to me. And it makes sense because that perfectly lines up with my opinion of this book, and that is that although I think it's a very beautifully crafted story where everything is woven together very well, the themes are amazing, it doesn't really speak to me in a way that it would be like a next favorite. I really loved it. It was a beautiful story, a solid 4-star read for me. I think the fact that the characters remain so hollow, even though it fits the style of the book, is what kind of kept me from really loving it. Normally I also don't have a problem with characters being very unlikable. I think the beauty of reading books about very unlikable characters is that somehow the unlikability of these characters speaks to like a dark part of you. That's what I have. That's what I had with Bunny. That's what I have with most of Sally Rooney's books. But with this one, I found the characters to just be unlikable, which made them interesting to read about, but not unlikable in that kind of like dark sense that it kind of speaks to you. And I think because of that, it's not a favorite, but I still really enjoyed this. Wow. A fully annotated version of The Secret History with alpaca heads poking out and all. Okay, and now, even though it's raining, let's go out and get ourselves a copy of our next Dark Academia book, and that is Babel, so we can find out in what way Babel truly is a tonal response to The Secret History. Here I have Babel. So excited. Takes place in Oxford at a prestigious Institute of Translation, and we follow Robin Swift as he is admitted into the secret society. I'm so excited to read this. My friend Sabine is actually coming over in a few hours, so I still have a little bit of time to make a cup of tea, relax, and just immediately hop into this book and start reading.
Nice.
Cheers. Look what Sabine gave me. Okay, you cannot see this in this light. If you like this, Sabine has an Etsy store and she sells these. And I love it. Perfectly on theme for the video.
Yeah, true.
Thank you.
You've embroidered these.
Yes, I made these myself.
Oh, I'm so jealous that you... Is that hard to do?
No,
Okay.
it's pretty easy.
Okay, because I'm
And this
like...
is also very small, so...
But it's so dainty and so cute and it just adds a little bit of like extra something to the
it's really
outfit.
fun to do.
Yeah. Didn't you make like a little... You shot a clip of it in a video too.
Yeah, I was starting a bee on a t-shirt, but I lost my embroidery stuff.
Oh no!
And I still have all my threads, but I lost my needles and I don't know where they could be, so I have this t-shirt with like a half embroidered bee on it, so I can't really wear it.
That's really sad.
Yeah, it's really sad, but I really want to finish it. But embroidering is kind of, it's just one of those hobbies that I started and then never really did anything with it.
I really want to start to learn how to crochet. The thing is with me and hobbies is I want to like be immediately really good at it, and you know that's not how hobbies and just like skills in general work. And then I just don't start doing it because I'm like, I want to learn how to crochet not a blouse. You can't crochet a blouse. How do you call
like
it?
A cardigan.
Yeah, like a
Same.
yeah, and just like bags and but that's Sabine. That's like at least medium to like average to skilled, and you haven't crocheted anything.
You have to go through the stages of being bad at it.
Yeah.
But I don't like being bad at something.
Same.
So I just stop.
Or just don't even start.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I start and then I'm like, or indeed I don't start because I know I'm gonna be bad at it. And then it's like, I remember at some point, long time ago, I tried to teach myself to play the piano because I don't know any musical instruments. Because I wanted to, you know, like do all the cool classical stuff. So I started with like a song, like a Rihanna song, which was just like a few
chords,
a few chords. And I immediately wanted to do like all the singing with it, so I taught myself, and then I stopped after like 2 weeks because I was like,
this is not working.
I can't do this.
Why?
Why?
Like, all of these
Why
people.
am I not immediately amazing at this?
Yeah. I feel you. I've had this with the ukulele as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like my friend got me a ukulele for my birthday almost 4 years ago, and no.
No. How long did you try?
I think, again, same as you, a couple of weeks I tried to learn the chords too. And then it's just, I don't know how to hold my hands, and it's just
Yeah.
be a goal of me to learn how to crochet and then make my own bag and walk in town and be like, I made this.
I made this. This is mine. This is my child.
Yeah.
I created this.
And like, look at how beautiful it is.
Yeah. Look at how good I am at this. Look at how skillful I am.
Give me compliments, please.
Yeah.
Who made that? Ooh, I did.
That's very dark academia of you.
Thank you. You wanted to discuss dark academia, but I'm like not I don't feel like I'm an expert person to talk about dark academia stuff, because I always feel like I just enjoy the aesthetic and I really appreciate it, but like with books I'm always scared that I'm not how do you call it, like smart enough for dark academia.
To understand it? Or?
Yeah, maybe, I guess. I don't know.
Like in what way?
Like if something is really dark, academic and like talks about big people in history, like philosophers and just like historical figures, I'm like, who is that? I don't know, and I probably should.
Not necessarily. I mean, when I was reading The Secret History, there were so many. I mean, not only are there just like entire lines in Latin or Greek, and they're not always translated. And then also sometimes in French, and then I felt very good about myself if I could like kind of understand it. I was like, I know what this says. But I actually really enjoyed the process of reading the Secret History, and then having my little pen in hand, and then being like, oh, I don't know what they're referencing. Oh, they're talking about the cult of Dionysus. What is this? What is a bacchanal they're doing a bacchanal.
Questionable.
But then you Google it and you're like, ooh, it's this, and then you write it down in the margins.
Oh,
like you translate the Latin, and it's like, ooh, this is what it means, and that's the fun part.
Yeah.
You like learn.
Because it is crucial to the story to know what the Latin. Okay.
It actually.
It's just fun.
It's really not. Okay. Like most of the time, it's just like, here are all these names and these things referenced that are fun if you understand them, but they're not crucial for the story.
Yeah. Okay.
And in my experience, all the other Dark Academia books I've read, it's also not. Maybe if we're villains, maybe you need to understand a little bit about Shakespeare, which I do not.
No,
at
same.
all. But I still enjoyed the book.
Okay.
Like, you still enjoy it.
Can I have a look at your copy of The Secret History and kind of like what you wrote down? And your beautiful tabs.
Yeah.
Are they still in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do want to change them out.
Oh, this is like, wow.
Cool, right?
Yeah, it feels like such a loved copy.
And it's like my little thoughts are in there.
That's actually really good that you do it like this, because I just take a pen with any book and I just like underline things and there's no system to it.
No, but that's what I do as well at first, and then after I finish it, I start tabbing everything.
Okay.
I go over everything again.
Nice. There's such a thing as the fatal flaw, that slowly dark crack running down the middle of a life exists outside of literature. Ooh. If I annotate, especially like romance books, it's just like, I wish someone said this to me in real life, you know, like, I wish.
I used to make kind of the Dark Academia vlogs. You know, I had the Dark Academia diaries.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people have asked if I'm gonna make more. And why I didn't make any more, but I kind of decided to stop it because I don't really like the idea of creating your life around an aesthetic. And just being like, I'm gonna fit myself and my life into this perfect box of fitting this aesthetic. No one is just an aesthetic.
No.
You can't just be one thing.
No, that's true. You aren't.
You're your own aesthetic.
You're your own person.
Yes.
Shall we watch House of the Dragon?
Let's go watch it.
I'm very excited.
Yes, episode 6.
Here we come.
Good morning. It's 7 in the morning. I am making breakfast to go to work. I am making knekkebrød with my pumpkin jam that I made yesterday. I hope it tastes nice. So I started reading Babel. So far we've really just been following Robin Swift, our Chinese main character. It's about him and his friends following classes, dealing with a lot of racism, xenophobia, sexism, just generally all the signs that other people do not think that they belong at this university. And I think those themes are very well done so far. I'm gonna be reading this on my commute to work. It tastes like jam. One of the main things about The Secret History, one of the main critiques of this story that has carried on through many following Dark Academia stories, is that the cast of characters is incredibly white. Which is ironic because it's pretty much impossible to talk about classism and elitism without touching on like white privilege as well. Luckily we finally have Babel, where I would say the main critique thing is colonialism, but to be fair, it also touches on racism, misogyny, and classism. So it makes sense that we get a nice diverse set of characters. And the chosen subject of this book that our characters are studying is linguistics. And the book does a really interesting, good job at showing how linguistics and translation and just language is linked to power structures and colonialism. So if we look at it so far, this confirms my theory that the subject chosen in the Dark Academia book usually is very, you know, well thought about and perfectly fits with whatever theme the Dark Academia book is focusing on. Package. And I'm very intrigued to see what this looks like. Like I've never had this. I took it upon myself to buy some nice looking transparent sticky tabs. These two are transparent sticky notes. I think this is going to be nice if you want to make notes in a book where you're not entirely sure if you want to write in the book, so that you can just write on the transparent note, or you might even be able to highlight text using the transparent note. But what I was most excited about is all of these. Oh! Finally, I have some sticky tabs in nice colors. They have a lot of blues and purples, which I'm not really sure if these really are my kind of colors, but I love these. Pastel, and I already know I'm gonna be using these ones the most. Very fall colors. These are so pretty. I'm gonna be using these to replace my alpaca my alpaca sticky tabs for the Secret History, even though the alpacas are very cute. What color palette shall I use for Babel? Blue ones? No. I think I'm gonna go with these, the purple ones. It's unfortunate that I cannot find nice sticky notes like these in any Dutch stores. So I prefer not to buy on Amazon, but sometimes it's the only place where they have stuff. Little update on how it's going so far is that I don't want to say disappointed, but I was just expecting a little bit more from this book. There are some stuff that I really enjoy, okay? I love all the stuff about linguistics. I love reading all the footnotes, the amount of research that went into it. I love that we finally have a Dark Academia novel that takes the time to not just critique classism in academia, but also the colonial and racist aspects of it. There's just one big thing, one dark cloud that is looming over this novel that is really making it harder for me to enjoy, and that is the constant telling instead of showing. It was actually so common that I decided to start tabbing it. You know, normally a theme of a story is woven into the story. You know, you can infer from the things that are happening what the message is. You can infer from the way the characters speak to each other what they're thinking and what their motivations are. That's not happening in this book. In this book, every single time something interesting happens, something theme related or a character moment, it will immediately be followed up by the narration or literally a character explaining word for word what just happened, what it meant, what the character's motivations are, what the message of what just happened was. And it just takes me out of the story because, one, that's not how people speak in real life, and it's very jarring, and it's taking me out of the story, and it's making it feel very unrealistic. I will give an example of what I mean. There's a moment where the characters are having like a strong conversation with each other and things are revealed about characters and there's a lot of emotions, and you know, it was a very good scene, a very tense moment. But instead of just trusting the reader to understand what just happened and making sure we can infer what happened through subtext, one of the characters literally has the following monologue. She's not trying to be cruel. She's scared she isn't supposed to be here. She's scared everyone wishes she were her brother, and she's scared she'll be sent home if she steps even slightly out of line. Above all, she's scared that either of you might go down her brother's path. Do you see what I mean? Like, sometimes the characters feel like narrative devices to just explain the story and the message to us instead of feeling like real people, because of constant moments like this. And it keeps happening. Now that I've noticed it, I keep seeing it literally every single time something interesting happens. It is followed by some sort of paragraph like this. Maybe I'm just overreacting, so I'm just gonna continue reading and see what my overall thoughts are at the end. Now, something that I find very interesting about Babel is that this might be the first Dark Academia book that I've read that does not contain morally gray characters, and instead has very obvious good versus evil narratives. There's a very clear group of main characters that are the good guys, at least so far in the story, and then there are very obvious bad guys. And instead of exploring the theme through the actions of our morally great characters the way The Secret History does and a lot of other Dark Academia books do, she does so by using our evil characters. I think so far the main difference in storytelling between Babel and The Secret History is that in Babel it is made very clear to the reader what you're supposed to agree with and what you're supposed to not agree with through this clear distinction between good and evil, whereas in The Secret History it's not as clear and you are deliberately misled by the author. And that is the board of Babel and The Secret History. This is of course just my opinion that I whipped up very quickly and just made to look profound by using a whiteboard and a lot of arrows, but if you have any other ideas, feel free to share them in the comments.
I think we're running back to. Oxford was the answer. Oxford, which was what they'd all...
Okay, let's not burn things, maybe. Hello! Welcome to the kitchen. I am making moussaka as I listen to the audiobook for Babel. And I have the physical copy here next to me so that while I'm listening to the audiobook I can annotate the parts that I want to annotate. It's a little bit of a weird system, but 8:30 in the evening, so excuse the lighting. It's dark outside and I'm having a late night cooking time. I am a little bit over halfway into Babel now, and it's getting interesting. Where the story was kind of meandering at the, like, basically the first whole half of the book, the plot was kind of cyclical. Now, the plot is kicking in. Things are happening, and we are slowly getting to know the characters a little bit more, and I'm into it right now. I don't know why I've stopped to film this part, because I kind of just want to continue listening to the audiobook. Something that I find very interesting about Babel, and I guess that kind of explains the lack of like morally gray characters despite it being a Dark Academia book, is that it really does it takes the Dark Academia formula and does something different with it. Because thus far, the Dark Academia formula has always been reading about kind of shitty, morally gray characters as they do particularly bad things that a person shouldn't be doing, but it's fun to read about. But what Babel is doing is very interesting, because it's taking that formula and it's posing the question of, okay, but are there maybe situations where these bad things that the characters are doing are actually justified or the right thing to do. And now it's actually kind of starting to make sense why she chose to not write about morally gray characters, because that would kind of undermine the point. Hello. I wanted to have a little chat about the magic system in Babel. The reason that this is alternate history is because there's fantasy elements, the fantasy elements being this very original, cool magic system that is based on translating. And as being almost at the end now, I just really feel like there's so much lost potential here. Not only do we barely get to see the magic system until at the very end, the world of Babel has unrealistically stayed the same despite there being magic. Like, we don't really get answers to questions like how has the world changed and altered from our world because there's magic now? How does it change people's daily lives? How does it change the way people live their lives? It's very noticeable that in this book, magic is just a direct replacement of things that already exist in our history. I know it's supposed to be like a metaphor, but it's a metaphor in the way that you would say, oh, this apple pie tastes amazing the way strawberry pie tastes amazing. I cannot help but compare this book to another alternate history 19th century book with an original magic system added to it that is used to critique things like colonialism, and that is one of my favorite books of all time, The Gilded Wolves. I don't have the first book in the series, but in this series, Roshni Chokshi, the author, introduces a magic system that influences every aspect of life. It explores how the magic system influences the way we make art, the way people defend themselves, the way people approach colonialism, the way people exert their power. All of those things are changed because now people have magic at their disposal. And if you were to take the magic system out of these books, the books would just be completely different. Like, the plot would no longer exist. The characters would be so different because so much of their personality and their backstories hinge on the fact that there's magic in this world. And she can do all of those things all while still very obviously using the magic system to critique things that do exist in our real world. But I really do feel like if you take the magic system out of Babel, you would be able to tell like 80 to 90% of the same story with maybe a few tweaks. And I think that's a bad sign, especially considering this. Like, I've almost finished the book now, and at the end of the book, we finally get to see a little bit more of the magic system. But it does mean that we are being introduced to things that are apparently possible with this magic system that make me think, wait, that was a possibility all this time? These things can be done? If these things can be done, then that would completely change so many things. I think it's very clear from the way that this book is written that RF Kuang was very intent on this hyper historical accuracy, but I don't think that that is compatible with magic, because the moment you add magic to a world, that world changes. And I feel like this hyper historical accuracy has kind of stifled RF Kuang in her creativity. Like, on the one hand, it's definitely her strong suit in the sense that it has caused this book to be so well researched, but if you're gonna add magic, it should change things. Anyway, time to finish this book. Hello and welcome to the cozy corner of emotional despair. I finished Babel. Look at these tabs. Tab ASMR. I have spared you another shot of me lighting a candle and making tea, but I will have you know that this time I'm drinking some different tea. I'm drinking chai tea with milk. We are expanding. I actually really love chai tea. I just could never find one that I liked, and I never had milk in the house, and then I realized I can buy milk. I know. crazy. Shall we begin with a recap of the negatives? I would sum up my opinion on Babel as a fantastic, wonderful story that was just lacking in execution. My main problem remains the constant telling instead of showing. This book had no trust that the readers would pick up on the subtext and the themes by themselves, and I think this is where the book differs the most from The Secret History. I think the themes explored in Babel are so much more interesting, and the questions that it poses are so much more interesting than The Secret History, but The Secret History is like a masterwork of taking the time slowly to show all the little nuances of the characters and all the little subtle hints at theme, and it never spells out its message for you. Also, the plot twists were so heavily foreshadowed that nothing surprised me, and I'm not someone who guesses plot twists. Like I said, the magic system had a lot more potential, and I also still think that the characters had so much more potential because I really do feel like they were all used as narrative devices, just there to serve a purpose in the book, and of course, any character in a book serves a purpose. I feel like except for the main character, a lot of the characters weren't given the care to really flesh them out as human beings beside their purpose in the story. My favorite character was Victoire, and I was just constantly waiting to just break through the surface with her, to just learn a little bit more about her, and it just never really came. That being said, I do still believe that this is thematically so strong. It is so wonderfully researched, thought-provoking, poses so many wonderful thematic and philosophical questions. It was just chef's kiss. That's what I like in a book. And although the characters felt like just representations of a message, the things that these characters represented was really cool and interesting. And without spoiling anything, I think my favorite iteration of this was one of the characters who very clearly represented the pitfalls that some people who are like marginalized in one way but very well off and privileged in other ways can sometimes fall into. And absolute banger, last 200 pages. Oh my gosh, I was on public transport reading this book and I was just thinking to myself, like, I'm going to vomit. I am going to vomit right now on this train because I'm feeling unwell because of the things that are happening to these characters, but like in a good way. It's like all the things that I complained about thus far just flew out of the window in those last 100 pages, and those last 100 pages, I loved. I guess if we're looking at both of these books, The Secret History was just a very solid book, whereas with Babel, the highs were even higher than this book, but the lows were also lower than The Secret History for me. Also, I loved annotating. In Babel, I at some point resorted to using my transparent sticky notes. These ones. I think dark academia has always been a subgenre that has focused on critiquing academia and critiquing certain structures of power, and I think Babel is a book that really took that aspect up a notch. I just love dark academia books. I'm just so excited to just read even more of them. If you're still watching this, oh my god. I know this video is over an hour long. I'm so sorry. And I'm also not. Thank you for being here. I just love talking about these books, okay? I just love it. If you want to hang out with me more often to just ramble about books, subscribe to the channel. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter. I've been watching Gilmore Girls lately, giving little updates on Instagram, in my Instagram stories, so I'd love to hang out there. Let me know your favorite part of this video. I'm pretty curious because there were a lot of parts to it. And other than that, I can only wish you a very happy rest of your day. I just hope you enjoy yourself, and I will see you again next week with another new video. Goodbye! Awesome content I'm giving you it.
Like the mom.
Yeah.
Feeding us all the...
And absolute banger. Emma, do I have milk? Oh, this is what happens when I drink milk in my tea. Incredibly white and not this is not how you spell that. Wait. History. This dog. what's happening is, come on, inspired by theories of this dog. Why is there smoke? Okay, I'm sure it's fine. What the hell? Okay. Date, the smoke turns out to be someone randomly barbecuing on the streets. And the dog's still barking. Probably because he's smelling the smoke.
I feel like I'm always filming the same stuff.
Yeah, but I think that's to me, that's like the power of a reading vlog. If I open up a reading vlog, I love watching them.
Yeah.
I just put them on while I do other things. And I love seeing someone make another cup of tea and light another candle.
That is literally like...
I just love that.
Yeah, that's like the in-between shot. 9 out of the 10 times I'm in my room, the same room that I have been in for the past years, and I'm like, why do people still want to watch this? It has kind of like fallen apart. Yeah. Just like just like my life. I won't speak for you.
Is your life falling apart?
No.
Okay.